Kaimere is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Kaimere. As the asteroid which concluded the Mesozoic never struck Kaimere, dinosaurs remain the dominant terrestrial megafauna.
Mammals are a group of animals defined by milk-producing glands to feed their young, and by having hair or fur. Today, there are three clades of mammal: monotremes, marsupials, and placentals. Monotremes, like the platypus and echidna, have fur and produce milk, yet with venomous spurs and laying eggs, are the most primitive or basal group. Next are the marsupials. They lack spurs and give live birth, yet keep their young in an open pouch so they can breathe once lungs develop. Finally are the placentals, the clade to which we and most other mammals belong. We are diagnosed by the placenta, an organ which develops around the fetus and facilitates the digestion, respiration, and circulation while developing inside the mother. It is often taught that the order in which I describe these clades represent the steps from primitive to derived conditions in mammals, but, as we will learn in this episode, this may well be a very misleading format. The truth is, even though the three surviving clades, especially marsupials and placentals, are quite diverse and successful, we only represent the few clades that survived the end Cretaceous mass extinction. Before that, there was a surprising diversity of clades, far from the three we have today. Some laid eggs, others may have had pouches, while others still would have had live birth similar to us after a prolonged gestation. Throughout the Mesozoic, there were two major mammal clades, which both especially thrived during the Cretaceous. Both were closer to marsupials and placentals than the monotremes. The Eutriconodonts were a diverse clade with herbivores and predatory members, along with some that were aquatic, others gliding, and even a few large predators like the famous Rapenomamus. Alongside the Eutriconodonts, the other major group of mammals that peaked during the Cretaceous were the Multituberculates. Multituberculates are diagnosed by the many tubercles on their molars, but in some derived members, a massive blade-like premolar is a far more pronounced aspect of their dentition. Their relationship to other mammals remains a bit contentious. Some consider them non-therian, branching off either before or sister to monotremes. Others think them closer to therian mammals, or even nested somewhere within. Most appear to have been herbivores, using these shearing premolars to process tough seeds and vegetation, though small invertebrates were almost certainly on the menu of many, and some were possibly scavengers. For a long time they were considered quite primitive. Many had the venomous spur, like monotremes. It is thought that they were either egg-laying or perhaps bearing a pouch similar to marsupials due to the configuration of their pelvic bones. However, several studies in the past few years have countered this primitive narrative. A review of their brain case shows relative complexity. Perhaps most revolutionary is a study of bone development suggesting that they had a long gestation and a short period of nursing, something much closer to placentals than marsupials or monotremes. This may suggest a closer relationship to placentals than previously assumed. If they really are basal to therian mammals, this might suggest that marsupials, not placentals, are the more derived or advanced clade of modern mammals. Would certainly be quite an interesting shift in perspective. Big if true. Multituberculates were brought to Kaimere during the second Jurassic harvest. Non-mammal therapsids, especially the more basal cynodonts and therocephalians, were still a dominant presence in many of the niches occupied by mammals of Mesozoic Earth, and it wasn't until the first Cretaceous dynasty that more derived, large, and viably competitive mammals began to replace the non-mammal cynodonts in the known world and beyond. Though there was a range and some overlap, in general the Eutriconodonts tended to be the most successful mammal clade, diversifying into a wide range of niches, including aquatic, fully volant, and even macropredatory niches. Multituberculates were generally restricted to small generalist niches. While this paradigm remains to this day in Kairul, the northern hemisphere saw multituberculates gain a lot of niche ground in the aftermath of the transition between the Second Cretaceous dynasty and the Tyrant dynasty. Many Eutriconodont clades went extinct in these arid years, and before they could reclaim lost ground, it was multituberculates who underwent an adaptive radiation. They remained generally small, with 100 pounds being their conventional maximum during the Tyrant dynasty, and most were much smaller, but they diversified into their own aquatic and gliding niches along with a range of herbivores and predators. The harvest in the Oligocene brought a range of large placentals to Kaimere. They had a much easier time establishing themselves amongst the resident dinosaur competitors. Though the assembly long attributed this to the advanced nature of placentals, the truth is much simpler. It's easier to come in and compete with the big boys when you're already big. Multituberculates were plenty sophisticated in their own way, they just didn't have the opportunity to even try during the Tyrant dynasty. Their time would come in the fire and ash that leveled the playing field. Most animals over 100 pounds went extinct. Multituberculates were among the many breakout stars, quickly developing the dominant mammal clade in Kairul. A wide range of multituberculates now occupy many megafaunal niches in this continent. The Komatu, for example, is a cursorial multituberculate predator, which is analogous to many large carnivorans. Nikar, however, quickly became overrun with placentals harvested from Earth, often having the advantage of coming to the region with greater size and specialization to many of the plants brought along with them. However, there are a range of multituberculates found in the known world today, both native to Nikar, that survived the extinction, those that migrated from Kairul, or carried north as Arvel and Bacardia had broken off from Kaishel and moved north. Although multituberculates are often compared in niche and body plan to rodents, and fair considering there is a lot of niche overlap between native Nikari multis and rodents brought from Cenozoic Earth, by far the most abundant native clade are the passertheres. As their name suggests, these sparrow mice are predominantly subsisting on a range of seeds and insects. They compete directly with the abundance of songbirds in Kaimere that were present as far back as the Oligocene harvest, although they are much more common following the dynastic extinction. They have also had a distinctive song they sing to identify their species, also similar to songbirds. Though they have spread to many islands and Arvel, they are most abundant and diverse in Nikar, where over 200 species are found in the known world alone. Rodents outnumber them in species and population, but they are hardly a footnote in their niche. The passertheres do not have pouches, although they retain the spurs of their feet. Mostly these spurs are used by males in competition with each other, though females are also spar less frequently. Both sexes employ them against predators. They can be surprisingly violent animals for creatures so small. They will also press their venom glands while grooming to make their fur mildly toxic, a useful deterrent against predators who to swallow them whole. The largest passerthere are the finch rats, most common in the highlands of the Crescent, though even they are the size of a brown rat, and most are around the size of a field mouse. Perhaps their strangest member are the flying mice, a clade of gliding seed specialists found in the lowland forests of Nikar. Though rodents have had a successful presence in the known world, it is believed that their relatively lower abundance and diversity in Nikar compared to analogous regions of Earth is because of the success of the passerthirs. The most abundant multituberculate clade in Arvel are the Thalacoscuria. They may be very close to the portal today, but their ancestors spread around Nikar, through Kairul, down to the polar continent, with a land bridge formed during the Cretaceous. Then they were on Arvel when it broke off from Kaishel late in the Second Cretaceous dynasty. They may well be multituberculates like the passerthirs, but their recent common ancestor with this Nikari clade would be around 120 million years ago. Thalacoscuria have pouches that are used by both sexes to carry their young, rather than being part of an early development as seen in marsupials. Because of this, they have been proposed that their pouches may be convergent rather than a shared trait. Most are small, being analogous to ground or tree squirrels with which they do compete, though a few can get pretty big. The pouch marmots are a family of mostly highland multis that are among the few grass-specialized feeders in this clade. Their largest members is the lasuga. These giant marmots may weigh several hundred pounds. At 700 pounds, the big male lasuga are the second largest multituberculate in the known world. During the anchored period, they could get even larger and more diverse, being the archetypical big herbivore in these steppes and valleys alongside mastodon, megatherium sloths, elasmarians, and parankylosaurs. But the arrival of new grasses and grazers specialized for them, coupled with overhunting by Homo erectus, appears to have driven most to extinction. The rare and restricted lasuga is the last of their lineage, and are very much a minority compared to the mammoths and ungulates now defining the landscape. Though Thalacoscurians have spread to Picardia and the southern islands, most multis of these regions have a more recent ancestor from the polar continent. There are several Picardio-Caline clades, though the most abundant are the Plectomurids. Plectomus, or the spur mouse, is a common vermin in the Free States. Like the passerthirs, they coat their fur in venom to deter predators. This toxin may not save their lives, but being of poor taste, can prevent future predation of their kin. They may not reproduce at the rate of rodents and need more food due to the caloric demand of their venom, but fewer are hunted by predators as a result. Though a few proboscidean and sloths have swum to many Kaline islands, multituberculates still make up a majority of mammals on the islands. Thalacoscurians and Plectomurids each have their representatives. Plectomurids are the most abundant, as they inhabited these partially submerged continent before they became islands, but the Thalacoscurians are often larger, at least closer to the mainland. At between 50 to 70 pounds, the Soktol is the largest of the Plectomurids and is a very common herbivore in the southern islands of the Kaline Sea. The Picardian Plectomurid genus Chloroscurus is named and famous for having green fur. It is generally believed that this is due to proteins in their saliva adhering to moss and other foliage they chew, and they can then blend into their fur. The general assumption is that this is a dual camouflage both against the generally moss and algae-covered bark in the islands which they call home, where it most often rains, and muting ultraviolet light. Rodents of Picardia have neither of these forms of camouflage, meaning they are much easier targets to raptors and firebirds that can see both green and ultraviolet. Having more rodent prey lightens predator pressures, aiding in the success of the native green squirrels against their more recent invaders. The pouch rat is a plectomurid which took to the known world by storm with the spread of the first children 15,000 years ago, and has since made themselves comfortable in every port city. They have an ecological rivalry with the Chimeran black rat. The rats are larger and reproduce faster, but like the spur mouse, pouch rats are far less often victim of predation, and they can outcompete their larger rivals. Though plectomurids are the most common and speciose of the Pacardiochelene multituberculates, they are hardly alone in the clade. The moa hache is a strange creature in many ways, convergent with the eye of Madagascar, having strong jaws and long, flexible fingers to aid in the acquisition of tree-boring insects. The Titanoscurians are a clade of multituberculate which evolved in the Titan Gardens of Kairul. While many animals are specialized to the overall context that titanosaurs provide, these creatures are directly reliant on the titans for sustenance. There's not only debris that gets trapped in their spikes and scutes, there's also plenty of parasites to remove. Also, the giants offer protection. Predators are often wary to hunt the myriad tiny birds and mammals, which make these walking monuments their home, meaning they are often safe in these small and brave enough to climb aboard. As Titans crossed from Kairul to Nikar, they brought many of these tiny tenants with them. Though most Titan squirrels remained little, as the Titans established themselves in the forest of the known world, the flying gophers are a genus which became larger once they reached this new habitat, gliding about the open forests and feasting on a wide range of small mammals, insects, and fruit. Another lineage of Titanoscurians are the flying cats. They got large independently back on Kairul. They are now found throughout most of the Pacardiochelene Islands. How they came to these islands is debated. It was originally assumed that they were part of the flying gopher clade, though even a cursory dissection and study shows a wide range of differences, not the least of which is that they are not restricted to gliding, instead being capable of powered flight, at least over short distances. Following the description of extremely similar Titanoscurians in eastern Kairul, the current leading theory is that they were carried on debris by ocean currents, though the issue still remains unresolved. The sea beavers are another migrant from Kairul. They feed on a range of hard-shelled benthic prey, using extremely powerful jaws and iron-hardened molars to shear through even the shells of oysters. They also feed on aquatic plants. They are one of Kairulan pouch clades of semi-aquatic mammals, which conceal their joey inside while they swim. The lesser sea beaver is particularly common in the inland sea. Their much larger, greater sea beaver cousin is generally restricted to the Crescent Sea. By far the largest multituberculate is another recent aquatic migrant from Kairul, the Bilaruk. A great beast in many ways convergent with early cetaceans, it will be the focal episode of next week. Cheers to Lincoln for sponsoring this episode. Lincoln wanted to sponsor some episodes focused on smaller fauna, and I'm elated he decided to start with the multituberculates. While there are some giants beyond the known world and a couple big boys within, it was nice to give focus to the smaller members of this clade. Multituberculates are a group I find really fascinating the more I've gotten to know about them. Luckily for me, we're in a pretty exciting time for this clade. A lot of recent studies have recontextualized a lot of what we once assumed about them, not the least of which was a study which suggests that possibly the Gondwanatheres bring their survival of this clade much later into the Cenozoic than previously assumed. And from what I understand, there's a lot more exciting work on the way. I try to keep this project up to date. When I first started talking about multituberculates in earlier videos, I said that they laid eggs because that was the prevailing assumption at the time. Now we know at least some of them were likely similar to placentals in terms of gestation, though this being through convergence or homology, I'm not sure if we know yet. I expect as we get to know these little critters better, I'll be refining their lore and Kaimere accordingly. See you all next week for the biggest multituberculate of Kaimere. Thanks again to Lincoln, to my Patreon patrons for your support, and thank you so much for watching. Cheers, folks!